What is up, my imagination connoisseurs? It is me once again, RMB, coming at you for this. Is it the 18th? I think it's the 18th. Maybe it's the 17th. I don't know. I always forget, and then I'll have to go back and change the heading of this discussion. But the latest, today's ROBSERVATIONS live chat. And it's great to be back here. I hope all of you tuned in and watched the John Campea show this morning. I thought it was a barn burner of a show. What a fun time it is doing the show with Mr. Campea. So if you don't watch the John Campea show in the morning, I'll be doing it pretty much at least 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. And then we'll, of course, do the weekly hero as well. So welcome to all of you, those members of the Post-Geek Singularity community. And a lot of you have been asking me about my career, like how did I get started? And I did the chat. I don't remember which number it is, but if you go back and you look at the ROBSERVATIONS chat, I did a chat about the greatest lesson I learned in Hollywood, where I delved into my first job in the industry, which was being the art department production assistant on Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, that starred Viggo Mortensen, among other things, and Ken Foray and R.A. Mahaloff as Leatherface, and Bill Butler and Kate Hodge. It was a great experience, but I do get into my early career in that episode. But today, I want to talk about probably the luckiest part of my career. When I was growing up, I didn't really have any ties at all to the entertainment business. I grew up in Seattle, and I was known around Seattle because as a kid, I worked at one of the very first video stores in the United States called Video Space. I started when I was 13 in 1980, and Video Space was owned and operated by a guy named Weston Nishimura, and he later became the first president of the VSDA, which was the Video Software Dealers Association of America, which became quite an important group as home video took over. When videotape was first coming out and people could first rent films, everyone said it was going to be the demise of Hollywood. And even I, as a 13-year-old kid, was like, come on, man. Home video is going to turn everyone into movie fanatics. If you weren't already a movie fanatic, the fact that you could go get movies to watch at your whim was going to turn everyone into cineasts. And it came true. It absolutely came true. So from 1980 to 1988, I worked first at Video Space and then at Magic Video. And then I got a job at a company in Seattle called Silver Platters, which was at the time the largest optical disc retailer, get this, in the world. Because now Tower Records was bigger than we were. And I'm sure HMV was pretty big too. But all we sold were CDs and laser discs. So from 86 to 88, I worked there. So that's how I sort of began my love of movies on a professional basis. I used to write a column for the Silver Platters newsletter, The Laser Visions of Laser Bob. So yes, I was Laser Bob. Everybody who knew anything about Laserdiscs who came into Silver Platters, I served them at one point. So I moved to California, and industry job. I just turned 22 years old, and I was working on Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. Now, after I worked on Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, something, as Dave Bowman would say in 2010, something one. Now, when I was growing up, my grandfather and his friends, the Jews of the greater Seattle area, they all knew each other. And there was one person in that group named Harvey Bernhard. Now, a lot of you may ask, who is Harvey Bernhard? Well, Harvey Bernhard produced the Omen movies. He also produced The Goonies, and he produced The Lost Boys. And I had met him once. One time, I believe it was, he also produced Lady Hawk. And it was at a screening of Lady Hawk that I was introduced to him in passing. And that was the only time I ever met him face to face, and he sort of knew that I liked movies, and that was the extent of it. And, he was very much an old school, larger than life cigar chomping. Oh, kid, Hey, great kid. I love that you love movies. And I particularly liked his movies. And it was cool because he was really, other than people I'd met working my entertainment beat for my high school newspaper, when I had interviewed, say, Martin Brest when he made Beverly Hills Cop. Um, I didn't know anybody or people I had met like Paul Verhoeven that I was able to talk to for an hour at the closing night of the Seattle Film Festival when he had his first English language movie, Flesh and Blood there. I really didn't have any ties, no business ties to the industry. So I don't remember exactly when I got this call. I don't know if it was after Leatherface wrapped or sometime during Leatherface. I had a message on my machine. I got a call from Bill Young's office. Now, for those who might not know, it won't mean anything to you, but Bill Young at the time was the senior vice president of physical production at Warner Brothers. Studios are kind of broken into different divisions. There is the creative division, the senior vice presidents that oversee the development of scripts, and they meet with writers and talent. There's actually the heads of the studio, and at the time I was there was Bob Daly and Terry Semel, and then there was Bruce Berman and Mark Canton below him, and people like Billy Gerber and Alan Stewart and Bob Brassel and Lisa Henson, Jim Henson's daughter. These were the head honchos of the studio, and Terry and Bob ran the studio. Terry Semel and Bob Daly. And then there was the creative division overseen by Mark Canton and Bruce Berman. And then there was the physical production division that was overseen by Bill Young. So I get a phone call. So Bill Young was one of the highest ranking people at Warner Brothers, which at the time I did not know. So I get a phone call from his office, just random phone call. And I'm told to call his office. Now, I did not understand the hierarchy of a studio. I didn't know who Bill Young was. I was 22 years old. I was happy to be a PA on a New Line horror film. Little did I know what was about to happen to me. So I call that office, and they tell me that they are starting a new program. And what was going to happen with the management trainee program was that they were going to take 3 people. In my era, it was 3 guys, 3 young guys. Later, girls were brought into the program, and the studio wanted to train us at one of the highest levels of the studio and show us how a studio made a feature film. How did it work on the studio level? And the feature film department, the physical production department, oversaw the day-to-day production of every movie that Warner Brothers was making. So I'm like, I still don't quite get what this is. So they tell me, we would like to see you. Please come to the studio at such and such time. You're coming to Warner Brothers. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm literally, I don't even know what the hell's going on. I don't know if this is real. I don't know if it's something that I'm dreaming. I don't know if it was a prank phone call, so I call back and I schedule a meeting, and I'm going to meet with Bill Young. Still have no idea. So I drive to the studio, and Warner Brothers, even to this day, it's still, at the time, it was what was Columbia. Columbia shared the lot. It was the Burbank Studios, and Warner Brothers was on the lot, and Columbia was on the lot at that time. So for me, I'd never been on a movie studio lot aside from the time I had been to Universal as a kid, and I saw the production of Airport 77. That was the only time I'd ever been on a movie studio lot, was during the Universal Studios tour in 1976. So I go to the studio, just like, oh, wow, you drive on. I drove on. I think it was gate 4, the Hollywood Way gate. So you drive right past the guard gates. There's guards, and you have to show your ID, and you have to be on a list. And there was the Warner Brothers water tower, or at the time, the Animaniacs water tower. But it wasn't the Animaniacs water tower then. It was the Burbank Studios water tower, I think. It's been a long time. So I go there, and I go into this office, and I meet with Bill Young, the senior vice president of everybody. This is a guy everybody wants to know. If you want to make a movie, you want to know him. And if you're making a movie at the studio, you certainly want to know him. But I did not know this. I don't even know why I'm there. So Bill Young tells me that Harvey Bernard has spoken highly of me, and he thinks I'm the kind of guy that should be part of this new management trainee program. I'm like, what? And we meet, and we have this great conversation, and we talk about, and he's also an old school. He was the nicest man. To be honest, I don't know if I know he retired from Warner Brothers and oversaw the production of a lot of the Harry Potter movies in London, but I don't know what he's doing now. I don't know if he's still around. I hope he's still with us, because he was the nicest man. And he basically gave me a job right then and there. So I become one of 3 management trainees. It was me, Jamie Johnson, and a guy named John Labib. And John and I were the first people there. And we basically are given an office. It's a little tiny, not much bigger than a broom closet, behind the coffee machine. But we're in the executive wing of the studio. Like Bob Daly and Terry Semel are down the hall and up the stairs. And that's where, and then you've got Bruce Berman and Mark Canton were right outside the big doors. And that's where I was working. Suddenly I was thrust into the inner workings of the highest echelons of one of the biggest movie studios on planet Earth. And I'm 22, and all I've ever done is work on Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. So it was it was like being dropped into the Twilight Zone. It was like any dream job you might have wanted to have. This was even better, because I was given an office, and I didn't care if it was a broom closet. And basically what my job was all day long was to push information around. So my big job during the day is there were 3 management trainees, because there were 3 executive production managers underneath Bill, and each one of those executive production managers were assigned movies, usually like 5 movies a piece. And I was assigned Kurt Newman, I guess Kurt Newman Jr. His father, Kurt Newman Sr., if I remember correctly, directed the original The Fly or Destination Moon. I can't remember, or something. But he was a cantankerous guy that he was sort of nice to me, but he also liked to make sure he put me in my place. He always said, what are you? And I would have to repeat back, well, I'm whale shit. And he would say, why are you whale shit? I said, because whale shit's at the bottom of the ocean and you can't get any lower than that. He would say, yes. So basically my job all day long was to go to the various production offices that were on the lot. And there are 2 pieces of paperwork that are generated every day on a movie. One is a production report, and the other is a call sheet. And a call sheet, which is always issued the day before, is a list of everybody that's working that day, both the cast and the crew. That's the call sheet. It has their call time and any other pertinent information on it, what the weather's going to be like, sunrise and sundown, all that kind of stuff. Anything that all departments need to know is on that call sheet. And then a production report is what's issued at the end of every day. On that production report, it would tell you at the time how many feet of film has been shot, what scene numbers were covered, how much of those scenes, like if they finished half a scene, you would have that on the production report. So what I would do, and everybody, all the major executives at Warner Brothers would receive copies of the call sheets and the production reports of every movie that was happening at Warner Brothers. So me, John Labib, and Jamie Johnson were each covering one of our 3 executive production managers. And then we also had to do any kind of busy work that anyone needed. Now, we had pagers, because the lot was a big place. And most of my downtime, which there was actually quite a bit of every day, I was on a motion picture backlot. Clint Eastwood's production company was there. Richard Donner's production company was there. Joel Silver's production company was there. One day I ran across Phil DeGuerre, the producer of the 1980s revival of The Twilight Zone. And if you weren't wandering around the offices, you could go out onto the back lot. They had a Western back lot. They had the scene dock where they would put flats for sets that they would store outside because there wasn't enough room inside. There was the mill where they would build things, the giant construction mill where they built flats for sitcoms, whatever was shooting on the lot. So for me, it was basically that someone took my dreams, my hopes and dreams, and decided to grant all of them at the time. And I mean, you never knew what was going to happen. Like one day, I get a call. I have to go down to stage 16 where Joe versus the Volcano is shooting. And stage 16 at Warner Brothers is a gigantic stage. That's where they built the shopping mall from Gremlins 2. That's where they built the half invisible building from John Carpenter's Memoirs of an Invisible Man. They built anything. So the day that I went for Joe versus the Volcano, they're shooting a storm because they can pull up the floor in stage 16 and fill it with water and shoot a storm sequence. So I go down there and I had to go and find, I guess, the first AD. I don't remember what I had to take down there from the office, but I just wound up in a conversation with Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks because they were shooting the movie there and I worked for physical production. So no matter where I went on the Warner Brothers lot, I was supposed to be there. However, because I was a kid in a candy store, my overzealousness frequently would get me into trouble because I didn't pay any attention to the hierarchy that existed on a studio lot. See, everybody who's working in Hollywood, especially at the studio, especially in a position where money is a factor, is always scared for their job. They're just, they wonder if they make a wrong decision and a movie flops, they could lose their job. There is a culture of fear even to this day. I mean, all of you should know that because look what with social media, the Snyder Cut. How many executives at Warner Brothers are still hearing about that every day and going, "Oh my God!" But you never knew. Like one day I'm answering phones for Bill Young because his assistant Nancy would leave at 6:30, so somebody had to come man his phones until like 8 o'clock at night, which I would. One day I'm sitting there at manning his phones, and Kevin Costner walks in. Just walks in because him and Bill are going to look at boats, at a boat show. And for me, I could just start talking to Kevin Costner. I was like, "Hey man, loved you in Silverado," and you just never knew what was going to happen. I'll tell you a funny story. So in my wing of the building, Marion Doherty, the famous Marion Doherty, who legend has it, I guess, discovered James Dean, if I'm remembering this correctly. She was one of the most famous casting, like Lynn Stallmaster or something like that. One of the most famous casting people ever in Hollywood. And she had an assistant, and I was in and out of everyone's office, so I made friends with all of the assistants very, very quickly, and most of them were usually lovely women, which was great for a young 22-year-old such as myself. But so I'd always joke with her assistant. I'm like, you should have Sherilyn Fenn come in here. Now this is pre-Twin Peaks, but post Two Moon Junction, if you know what I'm saying. So, I'm there. I've probably been there 8 months, 9 months, and I get a phone call. And keep in mind, I'm right down the hall. But I get a phone call from that office. And they said, Rob, there's somebody down here who wants to meet you. And I said, "Oh, let me guess, it's Sherilyn Fenn." And by God, it was Sherilyn Fenn. So I saunter down there, and I put on as cool as I could be. And I figured, I'm working here, so you got to play it cool. So I go in. And I meet her, and we started having a conversation. And of course, she's as lovely as she was in Two Moon Junction, if you've ever seen that film, or The Wraith, the movie The Wraith, if you have ever seen that. So, she asked me to walk her to her car, and I'm playing the coolest. I was the coolest cucumber. There I was, walking down the halls of Warner Brothers because I, after all, worked there with Sherilyn Fenn. I walk her to her car. Now, I don't ask for her number. I don't pull any lines on her. I just tell her I'm a fan of her work. I asked her what it was like, working on the films that she had worked on. I didn't go, "I loved you in Two Moon Junction." No, I'm just cool, man. I was cool the whole time. So I walked back to Marion Doherty's office. And of course, there in her office was a signed 8x10 of Sherilyn Fenn that says something to the effect, I actually have it. I should dig it out, but I have this 8x10 still. It says like, to Robert, my biggest fan, love Sherilyn Fenn. So no matter, I was like, really? Really? Did you do this to me? Here I was, I tried to be so cool. She knew I was nothing more than a slobbering fanboy the whole time. And I just felt like a tool. And that, to be fair, happened quite often a lot when I worked at Warner Brothers. But there were times when I would come across things like one day I go down into the mill and I notice that the Time Machine from Nicholas Meyer's seminal science fiction thriller Time After Time that stars Mary Steenburgen, David Warner, and Malcolm McDowell. If you haven't seen that movie, it's a wonderful, wonderful film. It's the movie he made before Star Trek II. It's up hanging like on the ceiling in the mill. And it's been there, I was there in 89 and Time After Time came out in 79. So it's probably been there for 10 years. No one touched it. I don't even think anyone knew what it was. And I always wanted to take it down. But when I'd have my friends come visit, yeah, come on, man, I could get you a drive on. And people would come on the lot. And I would take people and show them the Time Machine. And the other things I like to take people to and show the shuttles from the V miniseries. The white shuttles with the alien Nazi-esque symbol on the front, the red, like the S with the dots. Those full-size shuttles were just parked in the back lot. They could get rained on. When were they ever going to used again? They were just there. You could climb inside. So that was one of the stops that I made when people would come visit. And every day there was something. And I learned to read scripts backwards because every time I would go into someone's office, they always had stacks of memos and notes or scripts that I wasn't supposed to know anything about. So I got very practiced at reading backwards letters because I wanted to know. You never knew what you were going to find out. Ooh, Warner Brothers is going to make, and everyone knew this about me. Everyone knew that nothing was safe, and everyone kind of thought it was funny. They would indulge me. We'd get copies of scripts in, and of course, I made extra copies of every script. If I was told to make 10 copies of scripts and distribute them, I would, like when Shane Black's last Boy Scout script was released. It famously sold for it was the first big spec sale. It sold for 1.75 million or something. I had to copy that script when it was first released. And of course I would make myself an extra copy. And if I couldn't just get it from the copy room to my office, I would slide it underneath the copy machine and I would get the script. I would retrieve it at night when everyone was gone, so there was less chance of getting caught. And I would take it home and read it. The greatest script that I ever got to read was one day there was a secret meeting upstairs. It was actually in Bruce Berman's office. There was a secret meeting, and I didn't know what it was, but I was asked to stay behind. Bill was staying at the office late, and it was something that I wasn't supposed to know, but Bill wanted me there. So he calls me up to Bruce Berman's office, and it was the way I remembered it was, I don't know if Bob Daly and Terry Semmel were there, but Mark Canton was there, Bruce Berman was there, Bill Young was there, my boss, and David Lean was there. I mean, David fucking Lean, the director of Lawrence of Arabia, and he's old, but he was there. And Bill hands me the script. I believe it was Robert Bolt who wrote it. The script for Nostromo. That was this long rumored David Lean project that had been gestating for a long time. And Bill looked at me, and they're all looking at me. And I guess maybe it was Robert Bolt was there. I don't remember. But Bill looks at me and he with the script up like this. And he says, Robert, I want you to make 6 copies of this script, not 7. Oh, okay. And he might as well have winked at me. He didn't, but he might as well have. So, of course, I go downstairs. There's nobody left. Lisa Henson always worked late. And it was great because I would always go into her office because her office was filled with comic books and she met everybody. I remember she had a meeting with Howard Chaykin who was pitching Grimjack, a Grimjack movie. And we had a long conversation about that. So I went and copied. Of course, I made 7 copies of Nostromo. And I, stuck one into the copy machine. And when the meeting was over and everyone left, of course I went and got that script. I think I actually still have it somewhere. One night when the Academy Awards were on, I was working late. Lisa Henson, who I think people thought that there was something that we were having some kind of an affair because I was always in her office and people were always talking that you spent a lot of time with Lisa. but I held her in such high regard. I worshipped the ground that Lisa Henson walked on, and she always gave me the time of day. And she introduced me to Sam Raimi when he was on. I went and got ice cream with Sam Raimi when they were scoring Darkman at Warner Brothers. You know, I met Danny Elfman. It was just crazy. I mean, working. And one day Lisa Henson comes and gets me. She takes me to Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment, and we watched the Academy Awards when Driving Miss Daisy won the Academy Award for Best Picture. That happened. I mean, this was what it was like to work at Warner Brothers. You just never knew what amazing stuff was going to happen for a movie fan during the day. While I was there, Warner Brothers made a lot of really bad movies. There were very few good movies that Warner Brothers made. The chief movie that I got to watch the entire production of from the studio perspective, which was quite interesting, was Bonfire of the Vanities. Now, if any of you know what happened with Bonfire of the Vanities, it wasn't good. And there was one of the executive production managers, Ron Smith, was basically sacrificed. The studio sent him to New York for months to sort of bring that production under control. It was crazy. But Fred Caruso, who produced that film, was one of the producers of the Godfather movies, and it was just, you could hang out with these people. Albert Brooks made Defending Your Life when I was there. I got to meet Albert Brooks. I got to meet Brian De Palma. I met Richard Chew, who was one of the editors of Star Wars. He was editing Singles, the movie Singles. Cameron Crowe. I hung out with Cameron Crowe when they were prepping Singles before they went up to Seattle. I mean, it was the time I got kicked off. Here's a good one. So one night I'm going back to my car. I'm going to where my car was parked in the back lot. They're filming Rocky V, the end of Rocky V, the fight between Tommy Gunn and Rocky. I didn't know what was going on. Now, it wasn't a Warner Brothers movie, but Warner Brothers rented out its backlot, so there was all kinds of movies filming there all the time. So I'm standing there watching. I'm watching them film this fight. And of course, somebody comes over to me and says, excuse me, who are you? You know, I wasn't wearing a tag or anything, you know, like Rocky V crew, whatever. I go, oh, I'm Rob Burnett. I'm from feature production. The guy's like, feature production? I go, yeah, Warner Brothers feature production. And they're like, this is an MGM movie. Get off the set. So I get kicked off the set. And I did say I worked for Bill Young's office. And then this was one of the many times that this happened. I got called into Bill's office, and Bill said, you know, Rob, if they're shooting a movie do you have to go see every movie that's shooting on the back lot? Do I have to get these phone calls from everyone? And he thought it was funny because he knew how much fun I was having at this job, because no one paid more attention to what was going on in every department of the studio as I was. I mean, it was an incredible time. I'll tell you another funny story. So when they're shooting Bonfire of the Vanities, I get a phone call from Melanie Griffith's assistant, and her assistant says, yes, we've been calling the studio, and anybody that came to visit the studio, VIPs or whatever, that feature production had any sway over, they would make me show people around the lot, because I would show them the V shuttles and the time after time thing. And this is before Warner Brothers had a studio tour. There was no studio tour. It was a working studio. So I get this call from Melanie Griffith's assistant that I'm supposed to take her and Don Johnson's kids. This was before Dakota Johnson was born. I think it was before Dakota Johnson was born. And I don't know if it was, I don't think she was alive yet when this happened, but I was supposed to show, I guess they had 2 kids at the time, and I had to show them around the lot. Well, we had just finished Gremlins 2, and there was a lockup with the $3 million of Rick Baker's Gremlins puppets that were on the Warner Brothers lot. So I figured, well, what better place to take a bunch of little kids, or 2 little kids? Because basically, what better place to take me? Where did I want to go? I was given the key to the lockup, so I could go in and open this locker. It was much bigger than a locker. It was like a shed that had all of the Gremlins from Gremlins 2 in it, including there was a full-scale gizmo head that I could put over my entire head, and it was for close-up, so it moved with wires that had these handles that you could do like this, and you could put it over your head. So I take these kids to this lockup. I open up the lockup, And I was like a couple hours. We played with the Gremlins with $3 million worth of studio Gremlins. I mean, that's what we did. And I, of course, say to the nanny and the kids, I'm like, you guys, don't tell anybody that we did this. No one can know. Go on with the rest of my day. Of course, I get the phone call about 6:30, or probably 6:15, because Bill Young has called me to his office. He's sitting behind his desk, which usually was a bad thing. If Bill was sitting behind his desk, it was a bad thing. And he looks at me and he goes, so, just got a call from Melanie Griffith. And I'm like, yeah. And he says, it's great when our department can do things to foster great relationships, to forge great relationships with our talent. It's something that we don't usually get to do because we're usually the enemy of production, because we're always telling them to spend less. So whenever we can make the talent happy, that's great. So Rob, good job. But by the way, if you ever do that again, you will never work in this town ever. And I will make sure of it. I mean, he did kind of wink after that, but that's kind of what he had to deal with every day with me. Every day it was something, because I was either getting into some place I hadn't seen, I was doing something I shouldn't have been doing, I was talking to somebody I shouldn't have been talking to. However, I was gleefully doing this. I had no agenda, which was probably it's too bad I didn't have a movie I wanted to make. I just was so happy to be on a studio backlot every day that they paid me. I had health care. I got a weekly paycheck. Hell, I got withholding taken out of my paycheck. It wasn't very much. I think it was like $350 a week. But really, I was getting $10 million a week because I was on a movie studio lot. And it was a heady time, my friends. And then, unfortunately, the stint came to an end. It came to an end. And after that, I went and became a reader at Silver Pictures, where I started reading screenplays for a living. And to be honest, I was a pretty shitty reader, because it was hard for me. I would procrastinate, and reading scripts was terrible. Most of the scripts were bad, and you had to write a synopsis, and you had to write comments. So I wasn't a very good reader. I didn't last very long at Silver Pictures, unfortunately. I did get to go back there and produce The Hills Run Red in 2008. But after Silver Pictures, I jumped over and I was the producer's assistant on Free Willy, which was great fun. I worked for Jenny Lou Tugend and Penelope Foster on Free Willy, and that was a great experience. I unfortunately don't have a credit on Free Willy, even though I should have. But and I'll tell you one last story about Warner Brothers in my archaeological digs in the scene dock, where they had these flats lined up, hundreds of them. I found these 2 crates, giant, big crates. I'd say, maybe 4 feet across each way, wooden crates, like what they packed the Ark of the Covenant in at the end of Raiders. And I'd been walking by these crates and I hadn't paid much attention to them. And one day I actually looked, and stenciled on the side was CE3K. Now, remember, Columbia Pictures was on the lot. They later moved off the lot, and it became all Warner Brothers. CE3K, what was that? You guessed it, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. What was in those boxes? The miniature landscapes of both Devil's Tower, the Devil's Tower miniature, the giant Devil's Tower miniature, and it was a section of street where the ice cream UFOs pass by Melinda Dillon and Carrie Guffey and Richard Dreyfuss. That was it. Those landscapes, and they'd been sitting there since 1977. I'm like, why they weren't in a glass case or in a museum somewhere, I don't know. I don't ever know what happened to them. All of that stuff. The Western Town is gone. That scene dock, it's all gone. It's all buildings now. The Warner lot has the stages haven't changed, but much of the other landscape of the lot has. So anyway, that was my second job, and a lot more happened. I could tell you stories forever about working at Warner Brothers for the time I was there. Many stories that probably shouldn't be shared in public forum. But anyway, for those of you who asked, that was my first real job in the industry, was working at Warner Brothers. And I learned so much working at a studio, and I had so much fun. Unfortunately, I had I was never ambitious. I got to do a lot of stuff when I was there. I was literally had access to anybody I wanted. If I had at the time been wanting to make an independent movie, I probably could have moved forward on my career, but it wasn't even in my mind to do that. I'd gone from being a PA. I thought that I would be a PA for 3 years and get coffee for people. I figured when I was 25, I would start my real career in Hollywood. But I was afforded this magical, once in a lifetime opportunity by Harvey Bernard and Bill Young, and it's something I've never forgotten. And I was extraordinarily lucky to do that. And if you can imagine what it was like, it was magical. Some of the other movies, let's see, My Blue Heaven got made when I was there. Doc Hollywood was made when I was there. The Rookie was made when I was there. Total Recall was shooting. It was a TriStar movie, but they were developing it over there. Warner Brothers acquired Until the End of the World, Wim Wenders' Until the End of the World when I was there. It was Nothing But Trouble. The Dan Aykroyd directed Nothing But Trouble that was called Trick House when it was being made. That was called Vulcanvania. I just watched actually a YouTube video about the making of Nothing But Trouble that's actually very accurate. And that was another very troubled production. So Warner Brothers did not make a lot of great movies when I was there, unfortunately. But anyway, so that's my story. And it was funny because this was the summer. I started in September, the summer after Batman came out. So the studio was riding high. Lethal Weapon 3 was being made when I was there. So I'm going to go back up to the top of the comments, and I will start looking through your comments and answering your questions. So once again, thanks to all of you, part of the Post Geek Singularity community who have come to these chats. I couldn't do it without you. It's great. Please check out my website, The Burnetwork, all one word, theburnetwork.net. I'm going to try and put new content up every day. If you've got questions or comments, please do so in the comments section here. And also subscribe to the channel, share the channel, tell your friends about the channel. And if you have questions, you can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM, or find me on Instagram at RMBurnett, or find me here, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. So here, let's see. I'm going up to the top. Keaton Carr 89 says, "Do you collect any movies on the Sony PSP movie format?" I have over 900 plus. Wow. No, I don't. I do not. All of my films are either DVD, Blu-ray, or 4K. Although I do still have some laser discs left. Wayne Poitras is hello again from Edmonton. I wanted to ask about the helmet behind you. Do you ride, or is that a helmet from something I should recognize? Okay. If you guys like Robotech, or the original title Macross, as it's known in Japan, in 2015, I want to say 2015, or maybe it was earlier. It might have been 2012, 2000 something. For the 30th anniversary of Macross, a Japanese helmet company made Robotech or Macross motorcycle helmets. That is a working motorcycle helmet. Of the four, Max, Roy Fokker, I had to have the Roy Fokker helmet. It's got the skull and crossbones on it. It says UN Spacey. I don't ride a motorcycle. I've never ridden a motorcycle. I've ridden a scooter. But I thought a real working motorcycle helmet from Robotech, you got to have that, even if you don't have a motorcycle. So that's what that is. Jason Soto says, "Welcome to the Robverse, Prince of the Sweaties. All hail King Schnepp." Miss that guy. I do too. Nay says, "Hello, the national broadcast has begun." I hope not the national broadcast that we saw in the first episode of Black Mirror. Future Doc 84 says, "Hey Rob, you are living the dream. Your enthusiasm is contagious." Well, basically, I'm not living the dream. I'm hanging on by a windowsill before I fall 200 stories to my death. But I appreciate that. Bill Barkley says, "By the way, I believe the Criterion Edition Laserdisc of Terminator 2 got ported over to DVD and Blu-ray." Did Criterion put out Terminator 2? I don't remember. Maybe they did, but I don't remember that. Lucas Kendall says, "Why are you wearing Max Headroom's jacket?" Hey, why not, dude? Come on. Rick S says, "Laser Bob, the disc master." I was too. Wade Poitras asks, have you ever done any work in the Seattle, Vancouver movie TV scene? The only work I've done is special features work. I was on the set of X2 a lot, X-Men 2, shooting behind the scenes and covering the making of that movie. But other than that, I've never actually, so many of my friends have worked in Vancouver. And of course, you stay at the Sutton Place and you see everyone at the Sutton Place bar. But I'm from Seattle. I've always wanted to make a movie in Seattle. I actually wrote a screenplay based on a book by Mark Lindquist called Nevermind Nirvana, which was the movie that I tried to get made right after Free Enterprise. But at the time, nobody wanted me to write or make a movie about Seattle, the Seattle music scene, nostalgia, which is too bad. I don't think you could actually make the movie now, but I wanted to see that. Bill Barkley asks, have you ever seen a movie called Moontrap? It has Walter Koenig in it. Yes, and Bruce Campbell. Let's see. Good evening. Movie Fenobi says, good evening, Robert. Were you involved in any comic-related projects? Yes. Again, as a DVD special features producer, I did the discs for X-Men 1.5, which you can now get just as X-Men on Blu-ray. I did X2, and I did Superman Returns. So if you buy Superman Returns, I made a 3-hour documentary on the making of Superman Returns that you can get on that disc. Deadline says Paramount has shelved Star Trek 4. Paramount has no comment at this time. All I can say is thank God. Thank God. But anyway, Bill Barkley says, anyone know what's happening with the remakes of The Black Hole and Silent Running? I don't know any of that, but it'd be neat to see a Black Hole remake. I thought Joe Kosinski, who did Oblivion and Tron, the sequel to Tron Legacy, right? I don't know. Let's see. Benjamin Workman says, I bet you Clint Eastwood strutted around like a badass. You know, he made The Rookie when I was there. Did I already say that? The Charlie Sheen movie that he was in. What was cool about The Rookie was the Mercedes 500 class. It was the first movie that was ever was in The Rookie, and it flies out a window. And I remember they brought those to the lot, and it was really cool seeing those cars. That was pretty great. Kenneth Cralis Jr. says, have you ever seen the props and costumes for the original Superman movies at the Warner Brothers Studio 2? Yeah, I've seen that stuff later. I didn't see it when I was there. Rob, do you have any models of the Martian fighting machines from George Powell's War of the Worlds? Asked Bill Barkley. I do. I think is it Pegasus that made that model? I think it was Pegasus that made that model. I have the Pegasus model of that. Let's see. There was also a recent series of Time After Time. Yes, Bill, there was. I can't believe that they made that, which I don't understand. Kevin Burns says, Time After Time. I saw that with my sister when I was 8 years old. Jesus, that blood splattered drawing room stays with me even now. It's great. You know, my name is John, but my friends call me Jack. So good. Love that movie. Laser Bob is on point tonight, ladies and gents. Thanks, Rick S. I appreciate that. Chuck Sousa says, don't blame you, Rob. Sherilyn Fenn, maybe it's me, but she was a throwback to classic Hollywood beauty. I agree. And she was also really sweet. You know, she was really nice. I did not know at the time that she basically was exploited by the great Zalman King when he made Two Moon Junction. Anyway, Anthony Gonzalez says, I just started reading Star Trek Probe by Margaret Wanderer Bonanno. Have you read it? Yes, I have. Probe is a really interesting publication history. Probe is for those of you who don't know, it's a sequel Star Trek novel to Star Trek 4 about the Probe. And it came and went. They had to change it a lot. It has sort of, if a book can have a sort of painful road to being published, that book had one. Freddy Krueger himself, Bill Barkley says Robert Englund was in the original V. He was. Let's see. Silent Thriller says, so the film industry is like espionage. Well, I think the film business wants to think they're like espionage, but they're really not. Movie Fenobi says, yes, Nostromo script, not Nostromo as an alien. No, not about that. Kevin Rubio says, advancing the tinfoil hat theory, if Iger didn't want to quash John Carter, why would the most synergistic movie company in the world not have any toys for Toy Fair? What was their tentpole pick? Yes, I forgot to mention that. If you watch the John Campea show today, I finally espoused my theory of I believe that Bob Iger killed John Carter on purpose, so George Lucas would have no reason not to sell Star Wars to Disney. But part of my theory, which I did not mention today, is there are no John Carter toys. There's not even a stuffed Woola. When has Disney made it? And John Carter is a Disney movie too. Anyway, that's a long thing. Kevin Burton says, I loved Howard Chaykin's American Flags. One of my favorite comics of all time. Optimistically Cynical says, I took my son to the park, and when we got home, we found his goldfish dead, which is a tough situation for any first-time parent. How do you explain autoerotic asphyxiation to a 4-year-old? Is it erotic auto or autoerotic? I don't know. I think a 4-year-old should learn about death, and if not, show your 4-year-old Poltergeist, because I think they deal very well with the death of Tweety, and also a dead goldfish. I think. Let's see. Noodles 1980 says your room looks cool. Yes, this is my girlfriend Elizabeth's. Her studio's here, and this is my stuff here, and I edit at this desk. Hassan Chavez says everything Captain Robert April. He had a date with Audrey from Twin Peaks. I didn't have a date. I just walked her to her car, and that was the one and only time I've ever spoken to Sherilyn Fenn. Chuck Souza says, what was worse, Rocky V or Tommy Morrison's boxing career? You got me there. I'd say probably, well, it's sad what happened to Tommy Morrison, actually. Captain Robert April says Dakota Johnson was born in 89. You know what, then? It very well could have been her, but she would not remember. If I ever meet Dakota Johnson, I'm going to ask her, I'm going to go, I once took you to the Gremlins lockup on the Warner Brothers back lot. Never tell kids to keep this a secret. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that. In hindsight, I learned an important lesson there. Noodles 180 says, do I still work in that town? Yes, I was working there today. Movie Finobi says, no offense, but I'm glad they cast Kate Winslet in The Reader, LOL. I'm glad they cast Kate Winslet in pretty much anything. Awesome story, Rob, says Farky50. So great that you have a jovial attitude. You know what? You can't not have a jovial attitude working in this business. As I've told people, I live in a state of perpetual bemusement. Because why not? Noodles 1980 says reading scripts sounds boring as hell. It's really not. I mean, if you want to work in movies, all movies begin with great scripts, and it really teaches you a lot about what to do and what not to do. There's no better way to learn how to write a script than to actually read scripts. And I really enjoyed it. I just didn't have the mindset of thinking about reading scripts as a job. I read every script like it was a movie in my head, and I didn't need to take as much time reading them as I did. I should have just powered through them and written the coverage. But Ryan Kramer asked, this is a good question. Why didn't you get a credit on Free Willy if you should have? Because here's the thing. I wasn't necessarily hired by production. I was brought on by one of my bosses from feature production. My light is dying. I'm going to turn this down. Maybe it'll last longer. Maybe not. But no. So you get a credit because, and remember this, kids, it's a life lesson you can never, ever forget. You don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate. And when I was hired to work as the producer's assistant on Free Willy, because I'd known Jenny Lutugan and Penelope Foster. Jenny Lutugan was from Donner's office, and Penelope Foster was one of my production managers I worked for in feature production. They just brought me on. I didn't have a contract, a production contract. That's why I didn't get a credit. If you ever work in Hollywood or any other business, get your contract, get everything you want in your contract, because that you can always point to that at the end of the day and go, this is what I deserve because I negotiated it. So you don't get what you deserve, kids. You get what you negotiate. That's a truism. Use it in life. Movie Finobi says, I think you summed it up. No malicious intent. People with agendas can cause tension and problems, but when you respect the people and your circumstances, doors can open. That is exactly right. I mean, my winsome self has carried me through many a situation. But, you know, when you don't have an agenda when you meet people, and I didn't, because my agenda, I didn't even have an agenda to work at Warner Brothers. I was basically bequeathed with this gift. That was amazing. So I literally would bound onto the lot every day, astonished I was even there. And meeting people was just icing on the cake. And being able to talk to people, it was incredible. Chuck Souza says, me and an ex had a running joke with Free Willy. That's all I will say. I don't think people understood what a Free Willy meant in the UK when they called that movie. Noodles 1980 says, oh, I hated that movie. Free Willy? Oh, well. Let's see. Let's see. Let me go down. Future Dog says, what movie lately really surprised and excited you? Well, really surprised and excited me. I don't know. I don't know if I've been surprised and excited. I was, again, the movie that I just adored most this year. It's not the best movie of the year, but it's a movie I couldn't believe. It was. I always go back to Infinity War because that surprised and delighted me just how much I loved it. I loved it. Chuck Souza says, ever think about dipping toes back in producing and directing a horror film? Keep the budget low. Oh, yeah. Currently, I'm producing a movie called Tango Shalom that I'm also editing. I've been working on it for a couple of years now, but we're reaching the finish line. So, yes, I mean, I desperately want to direct movies again. And I've got a couple of projects I'm working on. Kevin Burns says, is that an Enterprise deflector dish or a claw sonic device just above the Xenomorph? I assume that you're talking about this. That is the ring ship Enterprise that was first seen in the wreck deck of the refit Enterprise in Star Trek The Motion Picture. Kenneth Crayley Jr. says, Rob, you are super awesome and love all the content you do. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. That's all I try and do is great content. That's all I want to make is great stuff and keep doing it and working with people I think are cool. Cosmic Doctor says, films my friends and I always watch when we were kids. The Toxic Avenger, Dark Man, Evil Dead. Fans of those, Robert? Oh, yeah. By the way, I don't know if any of you know this, but I worked on Army of Darkness. I was a makeup effects production assistant, and I have a screen credit on Army of Darkness that I'm particularly proud of because I loved Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. So working on Army of Darkness was badass. Chuck Souza says, I got to go back and finish the Campia show like John Carter, and I think it doesn't deserve the shade it gets. I don't either. I love John Carter. Going through some old animated Disney films, got any favorites? Oh, absolutely. I mean, I love Snow White. I love Pinocchio. I love Fantasia. I love Cinderella. I love Lady and the Tramp. I love all the classic Disney cartoons. Pardon me. I love the classic Disney animated films. I love Disney cartoons like Silly Symphonies and things like that. I love all classic stuff. Comic Doctor says, do you collect old comics? You know what? I do not collect individual comics anymore. I just don't. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to get rid of, I probably have 30,000 comic books, mostly from the 80s. I'm going to get rid of them all because I've bought all the other I bought all the things I continue to read, all on omnibuses. And as a matter of fact, I got something new today that I didn't even know that I'd forgotten I even ordered this. This is the hardcover collected version of Jason Lute's Berlin. It's great. I've read a little bit of it. I haven't read all of it. This is why I picked this hardcover up. I didn't even know it was coming out. I totally forgot I ordered it. But I highly recommend it. It's a great book. So I don't collect individual issues anymore. But I do still collect graphic novels. If they're hardcover, even better. Brian Eng says, did any of the scripts you read get made? Yes, actually, a lot of them got made. Dr. Giggles. That was a script I read a million times. I had to do coverage on umpteen versions of that. Speed Racer got made, although not the drafts I had read. Copycat was a script I read when I was at Silver Pictures. Face Off, the Danny Cannon, Judge Dredd. But the script, I said yes. When you read scripts, you either say recommend, maybe, or no. But one time I said yes to a script. And I've said this before. I told this story before. 7. Andrew Kevin Walker's 7. I read in 1990. It didn't come out till 95 because everyone wanted to change the ending. But I read that script when I was at Silver Pictures, and it's the only screenplay I ever read that I said yes to. I was right, by the way, just to point that out. Eugene Keeler says, "Good morning from Manila. I sometimes wonder if you're in the same room with that white cabinet behind you. It's not covered. Then another episode. It's not." Well, I have to say that my girlfriend, she actually bought those nice white drawers and put her stuff in there because she wanted it to look better for these live chats. So kudos to Elizabeth for doing that. She takes very good care of me, and she takes very good care of the family here. So everybody give a shout out to Elizabeth. Sebastian said, "Hello, Rob. Have you watched the Discovery shorts? The brightest star was the dumbest written Star Trek I've seen in a long time. Do you have any hope for season 2? No, I have no hope for season 2, but I want them to succeed. You know, this idea that the Spock that we're going to meet is a different Spock. He hasn't become the Spock that we know. All because of one moment where he smiles in the cage. They've decided to tell us that Spock was already the science officer on board the Enterprise. And then when the Red Angels show up, he goes on some damn fool crusade to I don't know what. He becomes emo Spock and starts smiling and feels all emotional. That, to me, that misunderstanding of Spock is exactly why I hate Discovery. No, look, I hope it's going to be good. I really do. But it's like, why don't they create their own new characters? Their characters lasted a year, and then they had to go back and let's get Captain Pike again, and let's get Spock again. You know, let's get Sarek again. Like I don't like the fact that they're changing these characters that actors played specifically, like Sarek and Spock, throughout their entire lives. Why do they have to do that? There was, if you believe the Franz Joseph technical manual, there's 12 Constitution class starships. Why not show us a different one? Why do we have to see the Enterprise? Because it's creatively bankrupt. That's why. But don't get me started. Raptor King says, "Greetings from all the way over here in Baldwin Park." Absolutely. I love Baldwin Park. Curtis Watts says, "Do you worry about putting a good lesson in your movies?" I really don't, because I think a great story has inherent truths about the human condition in it, and that's the reason you want to tell that story. And to me, it's all about telling a great story, and a great story inherently does address the great human truths and has a lesson. Bill Barkley says, "Is the Weekly Hero on tomorrow or later in the week?" You know, I'm not sure. We might be doing the Weekly Hero. There's other shows that are shooting in the studio this week, so I believe I'm doing the John Campea show tomorrow and Thursday, and we might be doing the Weekly Hero. I might be doing the Weekly Hero from here with John on Thursday afternoon, but I'm not sure. Dean DeLeon says, "Thoughts on Captain America or Captain Marvel footage last night?" You should check out today's John Campea show. We go into that at great length, so check that out. Did you see? Oh, Kevin Burns says, "Have you walked out of a movie before?" The only movie I ever walked out of my whole life is Shock Treatment, the pseudo sequel to the Rocky Horror Picture Show. John Half says, "Greetings, Robert. Are you a fan of the works of H.P. Lovecraft? If you are, what adaptation would you like to see on film?" I want to see Guillermo del Toro's The Mountains of Madness. I'm a big Lovecraft fan. I love the Cthulhu mythos, the old ones. All that stuff is very, very cool. It's very weird and strange, and yes. And you know, there's other movies like Dagon and Stuart Gordon's pseudo Lovecraft adaptations like From Beyond and Reanimator and things like that. Great. Bright asks, "Did I see the Watchmen teaser?" Yeah, the quick one that's part of the same HBO thing that has the Game of Thrones clip. I did see that. It looks weird and bonkers, but man, seeing a new Rorschach, and I guess Jeremy Irons is playing Ozymandias. Come on, I can't wait to see that. Ryan Kramer says, "Are you planning on going back to the Schmodown? Any chance of you appearing on Clark Wolf's Sending the Wolf podcast or the Josh McCouga show?" First of all, the Schmodown. Why would you possibly think I would go back to the Schmodown? I don't know why people keep texting me about the Schmodown today and how my return was one of the top 5 moments of the Schmodown Spectacular. Let me just say that was a deep fake video. I don't know what people are talking about the Schmodown. I love Clark Wolf and I love Josh McCouga. If they ask me, sure. Noodles 1980 says movies about garbage men, Fences or Men at Work. Which one did you like better? That's pretty funny. I think Fences is probably a better movie, but I like Men at Work. Bright says, shout out to Elizabeth. I will tell her that you gave her the shout out. Benjamin Workman says, I picked up the Criterion of Pan's Labyrinth yesterday. What is your favorite Del Toro film? You know, I think Pan's Labyrinth might be his best movie, but I really love his first film, Kronos. And I'll tell you a funny story about Kronos. My ex-wife had no key art for Kronos, so she put herself as the femme fatale on the DVD cover of Kronos with the gold bug, the gold mechanical bug on her, which I always thought was funny. Oh, Elizabeth says, thanks, everyone. Elizabeth's here in the chat. So you can all tell Elizabeth yourself how awesome she is, which you should do. Let's see. Hey, Rob, what's your ideal Superman film? What would make a Superman movie interesting? Any film that illuminates the character. I mean, my favorite Superman movie is Christopher Reeve in the original Superman, although I have a soft spot for Superman Returns, and I do love Man of Steel. Farky50 says, hey, Rob, I'm a huge gamer, and I wanted to know if you played any modern video games, especially the RPGs such as Mass Effect. You know, I like video games a lot, but I get so sucked into them. The last video game that I played all the way through and I played it to death was Grand Theft Auto 5. But I played every online, every aspect of that game I played. But then the last 3 or 4 years, I haven't been playing any games. I desperately want to play Spider-Man, Red Dead Redemption, and the new God of War. But I do love video games. Limac Adjaz says, good morning, Rob. I just read for Hours Memory Alpha Wikicom, and I read that James Doohan wanted to be added to the DS9 cast in 93. You know, they should have added him. That would have been great. I would love to have seen that. Eugene Keeler says, yes, John, at my place. No, I would be here, but John would be in his studio. Or maybe I'll be at his studio. I'm not sure. Do you think it would have been better for Discovery to use Cybox, Spock's half-brother, instead of Spock? You know what? That would have been interesting. I would have given it up for that. Dean DeLeon asks, any stories or trivia from the set of Superman Returns that's not very well known? Oh my God, there's so many. I'll have to get back to you on that. I'll have to do a whole episode on the making of Superman Returns. As a matter of fact, maybe I'll get Brian to. How cool would it be to get Brian on and just shoot the shit about Superman Returns again? He'd probably do it too. Hassan Chavez says, have you seen Apartment Zero? Yes, the Apartment Zero from, I want to say it's 1989. I really like that movie. Let's see. Robert April says it would have been better if Discovery just went away. Yeah. Mojo says, wait, this isn't the Trump speech. Uh-oh. Trump's speech is supposed to be starting right now. You know what? That's probably a good a good place to end this talk. So once again, I'm going to end this. Noodles 1980 says, one movie you wish you had been involved in, Empire Strikes Back. I would love to have been on the set of Empire Strikes Back, shooting behind the scenes. But anyway, I'm going to take off. Just wanted to thank you guys once again for being here. Remember, subscribe, hit the bell on this page so you know when I go on again. And I just want to thank all of you for being part of the Post Geek Singularity community. Support me if you can on Patreon or PayPal, whatever. And remember, as always, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. All you have to do is listen. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning on the John Campea Show. And tomorrow afternoon, I will be doing another live stream. Maybe I'll cover 10 movies that begin with the letter E. Then again, maybe not. So everyone go watch Donald Trump's speech or don't.